Okay, let's take on the topic of evangelism. We have um, a pattern that is shown to us in the Bible, um, and in the Bible times, there was no CNN, no ABC News, no newspapers. Um, they got their news when somebody came to town. They made them tell what they had seen and what they knew, and there were leaders that sat at the city gate and to take in this new information and pass it on. So a believer was begged for their view. Um, what'd you hear about this Jesus of Nazareth? And today we don't have that anymore. And we're supposed to hold to the Bible and not make changes to it, um, not be uh, casual Christians that um, apply the Bible whenever they feel like it. And but the Bible um, was written in times of less information. Um, so we're to look at the Bible and see the principle, which is tell people the gospel. Um, but we have to look at the Bible and change things when things changed, not being ignorant of the principles. Um, so let me give you an example of how we changed. Um, and one thing that we changed. So 100 years ago, the toilet came out or came in. So before that, we had outhouses everywhere. And outhouses were based on the Bible that says we have to take our excrement outside the camp. And sanitation laws and were part of our God's speech to us. And so um, when the indoor toilet came, many believers thought it was sacrilege to put a toilet inside the house. So they fought that for a long time. But it finally won out because they determined that um, the excrement had to be outside the camp. So they figured out that we could walk it out on our feet or we could flush it out by water. So the technology of moving excrement outside the camp by water instead of by foot became acceptable. And so the Bible could be ignored in that area, um, because the principle was being kept. Excrement was being moved outside the camp where it was safe. And so today we have the command to um, preach a gospel, and but we have to recognize that we are preaching the gospel in the U.S. to people who've already had the gospel preached to them, but the person that preached the gospel ran off with the church secretary and all the church's money. So we have um, so many famous preachers that were crooks or are crooks. The last one I'm hearing now is Philip Yancey is in some sort of trouble, and I could never have expected him to get in trouble because of what he wrote, and like his book, Where is God When It Hurts? And so we have the Baker story that with the $10,000 doghouse and the abuse of funds by um, so many of the rich evangelists taking money from uh, poor people. And um, in my case, I had an assistant pastor of one of my churches that was charging everybody in the church double for the cars they bought from him because they trusted that he would be giving them a good deal, and they didn't double check. And I double checked and found that he was selling cars for twice what they were worth. And so many people come to church today because um, it's a Tupperware party. It's a place to sell things. Others come to church to find a cute girl. The last church in this country that only had believers in it was the slaves. Um, they had to sing coded messages to tell each other where they were meeting, and they uh, got caught reading the Bible, they could be killed because they weren't allowed to be taught to read. And so they're the last church in this country that um, could be killed for their faith. So today we have people coming to church for every reason but because of the gospel. And we have so few true believers in the church that we have to be really careful um, how much of the outside world we let um, into the church. Um, so today, evangelism should be taken uh, to the current climate that we live in, which is there are people who tell the truth of the gospel but live the lie without it. And so before we teach somebody the gospel, uh, we have to prove to them that we're not one of the phonies. So today we have to establish ourselves uh, and instead of just passing a tract to somebody and hoping it'll save their lives, we have to prove that we're passing the tract for the right reason. We have um, people all around us who know people that pass tracts will also sell you an expensive car, uh, more than it's worth, will also run off with your church's money. So we have to make them know and take the time to establish our credibility before we give them the gospel, or at least during the same time. And most people aren't willing to establish credibility. They just want everyone to believe that they're telling the message for the right reason. So we can't uh, allow ourselves to be sucked into the old ways, um, even after things have changed. So we got technology that takes excrement from the camp. Um, Today we have technology that tells everybody the news, so they're not going to ask us the news. So we have to be giving people a reason to ask. It says that we're to be ready to give reason for the hope that's in us. So nobody's going to ask about the hope that's in us until we live that hopeful life. And then they'll ask, and then we can give them the gospel. Um, we got CNN now and all the news corporations, and so we've got to work around that. And it's not giving up on the old, it's hanging on to the same principle, but doing it in the current technology. God bless.